Which is more fattening, meat or starch? The vegans say meat. The meat eaters say starch. In this video, I'm going to provide an answer to this ongoing debate. Not long ago, I was having a discussion with a woman who had recently moved here from China. And she said to me, "You have a very flat stomach." She said, "Many people in America have big bellies. They eat too much meat." I didn't want to burst her bubble and tell her that when I was bodybuilding, I routinely ate 1 to 2 pounds of meat a day and had totally ripped abs. But it's interesting, coming from a culture that's been traditionally a starch-based culture, that she perceived the difference was that the amount of meat that people ate here was why they were overweight. Another experience I had recently was I was on the West Coast visiting with my vegan friends. And as I've stated in other videos, there's a doctor out there who's a big proponent of a starch-based diet and puts on wonderful conferences. And I enjoy spending time with my vegan friends. At this particular conference, someone had made a video that had showed authors of various diets that were omnivorous versus authors of diets who were plant-based or vegan. And they had photos of these different authors, and the omnivorous ones were often overweight, and the plant-based vegan ones were slender. And they'd say, so-and-so diet, fat, so-and-so diet, lean, and it went back and forth throughout the video. Now, it seemed to be indicating that meat makes you fat. So at the end of the video, I raised my hand and I said, bodybuilders eat a lot of meat, but they're the leanest people on the planet. I said, bodybuilders are far leaner than any of your vegan or plant-based authors. And then the host said, well, but I heard bodybuilders have to go on a diet before they are in a competition or before they show their muscles. And I said, well, that's true, but bodybuilders in the off-season, a good bodybuilder probably doesn't allow his body fat to go over 10 or 12%. I mean, when I was competing, 10% was my high, and then you would diet down to 5 or less for a competition. So that's still far leaner than any of the vegan or the plant-based authors, but yet bodybuilders are eating a lot of meat. For years, I hear people who are vegans or plant-based people saying, you know, hey, carbs don't make you fat. You can eat all the carbs you want, starches, fruits. You know, these people who eat meat, they're wrong. You know, it's not carbs that make you fat, it's meat that makes you fat. It's animal foods that make you fat. Now, I've eaten a lot of different diets. I've eaten starch-based diets, I've eaten fruit-based diets, I've eaten all kinds of vegan diets, I've eaten a lot of meat-based diets, I've eaten diets that were pure meat. I know that meat doesn't make you fat. So this ongoing debate it's perplexed me a little bit, and it's just interesting that there's these two camps that are so diametrically opposed. So I decided a couple months ago, I'm going to really put my mind to this and figure out this dilemma and answer this question once and for all. A recent experiment that I conducted supplied an answer to this question. I was testing different categories of food to see the effects on the pH of my urine. One of the experiments was eating nothing but 100% whole grains for 4 days. I was surprised at the outcome of this experiment because the results were very similar to what would happen if I had eaten nothing but meat for 4 days. First, I lost about 8 pounds. That's about what would happen if I ate nothing but meat for 4 days. Second, my appetite was very similar to what would happen on the old low-carb diets when they used to say, oh, you can eat all the meat and eggs and cheese and that you want. The problem is after a couple of days, you don't want those foods. You want carbs. Well, on the grain diet, on the starch diet, after a few days, I was really craving sodium, which happens because those are very low sodium foods. But normally, the natural foods that supply the sodium are the animal-based foods. So I found myself craving those animal-based foods. And last, the pH of my urine was 5.0 on the grains, and it would be about 5.0 also on the meat diet. So it's interesting that I had a very similar result from two diametrically opposed categories of food. But it helped me realize what the answer to this ongoing debate is. When a person goes on a vegan diet, they cut out the animal-based foods. That category of food is very calorically dense. so they lose weight. People on a meat-based diet cut out their starches and they lose weight because that category of food is also very calorically dense. For example, white fish is about 350 to 400 calories a pound. When you go up to salmon, a fattier fish, maybe about 650 a pound. Chicken, turkey, fowl, roughly 450 to 650 calories a pound. Mammal meats, lamb, beef, etc., approximately 600 to 1,200 calories a pound, depending on how the animal is raised and how much fat is present with the meat. So those are calorically dense foods. In the starch category, you have your potatoes, which are about 350 to 400 calories a pound. Your starchy beans, kidneys, garbanzos, lentils, roughly 1,500 to 1,600 calories a pound. Now again, all these foods are measured in the raw state. These numbers I'm giving you in the raw state. And grains, depending on the type of grains, are somewhere between 1,600 to 1,800 calories a pound. Again, very calorically dense foods. So if you eliminate an entire category of food, then obviously you're reducing overall calories, and that's the answer. Vegans eliminate calorically dense animal-based foods, and they say, oh, I got rid of those foods, I lost weight. The meat-based people eliminate the starch and say, oh, I got rid of the starches and I lost weight. So you don't really have to eliminate either category of food. I don't eliminate any categories of food because I think they all have merit and they all provide different things. But you do have to balance them out. So if you're keeping both animal-based foods and starch-based foods in the diet, then you need to adjust the portions. Yes, eliminating one or the other can cause weight loss, but I think it's ideal to have a balance. So the question is, which is more fattening, meat or starch? The answer is neither. It all depends on how they are organized and balanced in the diet. I'm Jeff Rowley for Fitness Innovations.